Napoleon Bonaparte was a military leader and great strategist, crowned as Emperor of the French in 1804 and King of Italy in 1805. He ruled until 1814, although 1 year later he returned to the power, retaking those titles for approximately 100 days more. Let's see now the 23 curiosities of this man. Number 1. Napoleon hated France when he was young. This is because he was born in Corsica, an island that was militarily invaded by France just before the birth of Napoleon. In fact, the Corsican wrote during his youth that the French were monsters, enemies of the free man. 2. On January 5th, in 1791, some young people were ice skating in the mud surrounding the fort of Auchan, France. One of the men left the place at 5 o'clock in the afternoon as usual, while his other colleagues continued ice skating. Right after the young man left, the ice of the moat broke and all the young people drowned. Curiously, the one who left and survived turned out to be Napoleon Bonaparte. 3. There is the well-known myth that Napoleon was very short. However, he was actually almost 1.7 meters, slightly above the average height of the time. 4. Like Hitler, Napoleon only had one testicle. Moreover, his penis was about 4 centimeters long, and it was purchased in 1997 by an American urologist for approximately $3,800. 5. The French Emperor Napoleon Bonaparte was considered by his wife Josephine as a sexual inept. She even blamed him for not bearing children. 6. He had a curious way of measuring his popularity. Napoleon wandered the streets and shops of Paris dressed as a civilian or disguised as a poor man. He talked to everyone and he measured his popularity according to the number of people who recognized him. 7. He was passionate about mathematics and science, and during his mandate he protected scientists such as Lagrange and Laplace. 8. Related to his love for these sciences, Napoleon ordered to send a group of researchers from different disciplines to Egypt during the French expedition in this area. The objective was to study thoroughly the topography, the environment, the culture, and the history of Egypt. This ended up paying off, and Napoleon's team discovered the famous Rosetta Stone, which can be seen in the British Museum nowadays. 9. Even if he was interested in the sciences, he did not see viable the proposal of Robert Fulton about the creation of a steamboat. Napoleon believed that it was impossible to sail a ship against the wind and against the tide by setting a fire under the deck. 10. The French army was usually very hungry on the front, and Napoleon decided to establish a contest with a prize for anyone who devised something to solve such problem. In 1810, François Père invented the canned food, and the Napoleonic army was the first to consume canned goods on the front. 11. While he was the first consul of the French Republic, some debates arose about whether the monarchy should return to the country. Napoleon's response was to call a referendum in which he was running as Emperor of the French. Napoleon won the referendum with 99.93% of the votes. 12. When Napoleon was crowned as Emperor at the Cathedral of Notre Dame, he did not let anyone to put the crown in his head, as it is usually the case. He himself took it and put it on. Moreover, The man in charge of crowning Napoleon was none other than the Pope of Rome, Pius VII. Napoleon not only crowned himself, but also crowned his wife. 13. His great-nephew founded the embryo of the current FBI, the named as Bureau of Investigation. 14. Sometimes, and after a hard battle or stressful situations during the war, Napoleon used the yo-yo as a way to reduce the tension of the moment. According to his soldiers, Napoleon was quite great playing the toy. 15. Napoleon Bonaparte was not only a general and emperor, but also a writer of love stories. He wrote the romantic novel Flisson et Eugénie in 1795. 16. Napoleon spoke French with a remarkable Italian accent. 17. The emperor made it legal in France to give his name to a pig. There is a vague line between myth and reality about whether such a ban is still in force in that country. Nevertheless, it is true that in George Orwell's Animal Farm, the Napoleon pig is called Caesar in the Gallic country. 18. Napoleon suffered from ailurophobia, which means having fear of cats. However, specialists in the field, such as Catherine MacDonald, claim that there is no evidence that Napoleon hated or feared cats. 19. Napoleon won more victories than Alexander the Great, Hannibal, and Julius Caesar combined. 20. Since the defeat in Russia, Napoleon Bonaparte always carried a small container of poison tied to a necklace, ready to commit suicide in case his enemies caught him. However, the day he decided to use it, the poison did not work. There are two main versions of why this happened. Some people say that the effectiveness of the poison expired by the passing of time. Other sources claim that Napoleon thought that he was a Superman and it was necessary to take a higher dose than a normal person needs to commit suicide. He did so, and instead of dying, he vomited all the liquid and survived. 21. Napoleon had arranged in his last will the desire to be buried on the Seine banks, but he was buried where he died on the island of Saint Helena. In 1840, at the request of the government of Louis Philippe I, his remains were repatriated. Today you can see the sarcophagus of Napoleon Bonaparte in the National Palace of the Invalides in Paris. 22. Exactly 41 years after the death of Napoleon, France lost a decisive battle against the Mexicans in Puebla under the command of the nephew of the Corsican, Napoleon III Bonaparte. Such victory is still celebrated today in some parts of Mexico under the celebration of Cinco de Mayo. 23. In Russia there is a very famous cake called Napoleon cake. According to the legend, this cake was invented to honor the centenary of the Russian victory against the French army in 1812. This is all for today. We wait for you in the next video. 7 curiosities about the turtle ship.